There are things in this world that science cannot fully explain. Things that happen in the still of the night, at the edge of a forest, in a moment when all hope seems lost, and then something shifts. Something unseen steps in. This is a story about one of those moments. It is a story about a necklace, an ordinary-looking piece of jewelry once smoothed by time and touched by a love so deep it refused to surrender even to the grave. If you have ever lost someone who protected you, if you have ever felt the presence of a soul that was no longer there but somehow still watching, then you already understand the heart of this story. Listen closely, because what happened to a young girl named Amara on the night of the worst storm the village had ever seen is not something easily forgotten. Amara was 17 years old when her mother passed. They lived in a small village nestled between rolling hills and a thick, ancient forest in West Africa, the kind of place where the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the ancestors was considered very thin. Her mother, Nkechi, had been a gentle but strong woman. She had raised Amara alone after her husband disappeared during a trading journey years before. Nkechi owned almost nothing of material value. She tended a small farm, traded at the weekly market, and wore the same simple dress until it faded from memory. But she owned one thing she treated as if it were made of pure gold, a necklace of brown beads, dark stones, and a single carved pendant shaped like an open hand. The necklace had belonged to Nkechi's own mother before her, and to her grandmother before that. In their tradition, certain objects could be charged with the spirit of the one who wore them, especially when worn in times of deep love, deep prayer, or deep sacrifice. Nkechi had worn that necklace through every hardship she had ever faced. She wore it when she gave birth to Amara alone in a candlelit room. She wore it when she prayed over her daughter's fever through 3 long nights. She wore it when she walked the fields under a merciless sun to make sure her daughter would eat. And when Nkechi fell ill and felt her time drawing near, she called Amara to her bedside and placed the necklace around the young girl's neck with both trembling hands. She did not say many words. Mothers like Nkechi did not have to. She looked into her daughter's eyes for a long, quiet moment, pressed the pendant against Amara's chest, and whispered that as long as the necklace rested near her heart, she would never truly be alone. Amara wept. She did not understand, not yet. She thought her mother was simply giving her a keepsake to ease the grief of separation. She did not know that what her mother had done was something far older and far more powerful than a simple farewell gesture. In many African traditions, the dying were believed capable of binding their protective spirit to an object, particularly one worn against the skin for decades. What Nkechi gave her daughter that night was not just a necklace. It was herself. Weeks passed. The village mourned with Amara and then moved on, as villages do. Amara grew quieter, thinner, and more withdrawn. She continued to tend the small farm her mother had left her, and she wore the necklace every single day without fail. The elders of the village noticed this and nodded among themselves. They recognized the signs of a grief that was also a devotion. In their understanding of the world, how the living honored the dead determined how close the departed could remain. By wearing the necklace and keeping it close, Amara was unknowingly maintaining the thread that still connected her to her mother. It was during the dry season, about 3 months after Nkechi's passing, that trouble arrived. A man named Seku had long set his eyes on the small piece of land that Nkechi's family had farmed for generations. With Nkechi gone and Amara young and alone, he saw his opportunity. He began pressuring Amara to give up the land through threats and whispered rumors, spreading word through the village that the girl was cursed and that her presence was the reason the rains were late. In some communities, such accusations can be more harmful than any physical danger. Amara found herself increasingly isolated, with fewer people willing to help her and more doors closing as Seku's influence spread. One evening, after a particularly difficult day at the market where no one would buy from her store, Amara walked home alone through the edge of the forest path, the shorter route she had taken all her life. The sky had darkened faster than expected. The wind began to move strangely through the trees, and the air grew thick in the way that the old people of the village always said meant the spirit world was stirring. Amara pulled her wrapper tighter and walked faster. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw two men she did not recognize stepping out from between the trees. They worked for Seku. They said nothing but moved toward her with clear and threatening intent. Amara's heart hammered inside her chest. She was far from the nearest house. She could not outrun them. She had no one to call. And in that moment of complete and total fear, something happened. The necklace around her neck grew warm. Not the warmth of body heat or of the night air, but a deep, radiating warmth that spread across her chest and up through her shoulders like arms wrapping around her. She stumbled backward, and the pendant struck her sternum hard enough to startle her into stillness. Then the wind shifted. It shifted so suddenly and so violently that both men stopped walking. The trees around them began to groan and sway with enormous force. A sound rose up from deep inside the forest, not an animal sound, not a human sound, but something ancient and resonant that seemed to come from the earth itself. The men looked at each other. One of them took a step back. The other stared at Amara with wide eyes, and what he saw made him go pale despite the darkness. He would later say, though few would fully believe him, that he had seen the outline of a woman standing directly behind Amara. Not a shadow. Not a trick of light. A woman, standing tall and calm with her hands resting on the young girl's shoulders, looking at them with an expression that required no words. The two men turned and ran. They ran without looking back, and when they reached Seku's house, they told him they would not go near that girl again. When Seku pressed them, one of the men told him what he had seen. Seku reportedly never spoke to Amara or sought to claim her land again. When the village heard what had happened, there was no shortage of explanations. Some said it was the wind. Some said the men had been frightened by their own guilt. But the elders, the ones who kept the old knowledge close, gathered the following morning at the compound of the oldest woman in the village, a woman everyone called Mama Choku, which meant something close to Mother of the Divine. She listened to the account carefully, asked a few quiet questions, and then she looked at the necklace around Amara's neck. She reached out and held the pendant between two fingers for a moment with her eyes closed. Then she smiled. It was a small smile but a deep one, and she told the gathered women what they already suspected. Nkechi had not fully left. She had stayed inside the thing she loved most, waiting for the moment her child needed her. This story did not appear in any newspaper. It was not the subject of any formal investigation. It lived, as so many of the most important African stories do, in the oral tradition, passed from one elder to the next, retold at firesides and at family gatherings, carried in the memories of those who were there and those who came after. Across the African continent, this kind of story is not considered remarkable in the sense of being unbelievable. It is remarkable in the sense of being sacred. From the Berber women of North Africa who give protective amulets to newborn girls, to the communities across West and Central Africa where griots and storytellers have long preserved tales of ancestor protection, the idea that a mother's love does not end at the grave is not folklore in the dismissive sense. It is a deep and living belief. What makes Amara's story resonate so powerfully, even today, is not just the miraculous detail of what happened in that forest. It is everything that led to that moment. It is a mother choosing, in her final hours, not to spend her last strength on grief but on protection. It is a daughter who honored that love by wearing the necklace every day, not as an accessory but as a conversation, a way of saying, I remember you, I carry you, I have not let go. In many spiritual traditions across the continent, the ancestors can only intervene when the living maintain the connection. Amara maintained it without even knowing she was doing so. Through grief and isolation and fear, she kept that thread alive. And so when the night came and the danger arrived, the thread held. The love that had been poured into that necklace over generations, the prayers of a grandmother, the labor of a mother, the tears of a daughter, all of it gathered in a single warm pulse against a frightened girl's chest and answered. There is something in this story that crosses every boundary of culture and language, something that speaks to anyone who has ever stood at a grave and wondered if the person they were lowering into the ground was truly, completely gone. Perhaps they are not. Perhaps love, when it is deep enough and worn close enough to the heart, does not disappear. Perhaps it simply waits. And perhaps on the nights when the darkness comes, it steps forward.